I invite you to rise for the proclamation of the gospel that comes to us today from St. Luke, the 12th chapter. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter over you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, 'Self, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God.'" The gospel, the good news of the Lord. I invite you to be seated. So here we have another set of these readings, this point in the summer, these readings that are so significant, so challenging. If we really stop and think about what we're being asked to consider as a Christian in the world today. I mean, what is Colossians telling us? And we'll hear about it a little bit in conjunction with baptism, but to put on a new self, to be transformed as we are in the world. That isn't something that just happens automatically. It's something that is intentional and done through the grace and power of God. But then we have this reading from Koheleth, the teacher, Ecclesiastes, and he's looking around at life. And what do we hear him say over and over again today? Meaningless. It's all meaningless. It's all vapor. It's all smoke. It all evaporates. And why do we work so hard? Why do we tire with anxiety and stress over accumulating stuff? Why? It's meaningless. And I couldn't get away from that word. As I listened to the news last night and this morning, the meaninglessness of yet another mass shooting. No, not just one, but two in the same night in our country. Done by people who look a lot like us. And I find myself struggling with the meaninglessness of people's existence, the meaninglessness of the terror that now surrounds El Paso and Dayton and the people who have experienced shootings in open places for no good reason, except that they're the other. This meaninglessness that we are asked to face every day, and we are challenged by Christ and by our scriptures to seek meaningfulness in our lives and to bring meaningfulness to those who encounter us. This xenophobia, this fear of the other that's gripping our nation is not who we are called to be. And I feel strongly this morning that one of the best ways to speak meaningfulness into meaninglessness is to hear the story of one like ourselves. And so I'm pleased this morning to invite Pierce Fairbanks, a recent high school graduate from here at St. Paul, who spent the last year in Moldova. And I want Pierce to tell you some of the story of why he has found meaningfulness in the midst of a world that faces him with these realities. So, Pierce.
Good morning. So I spent this last year in Moldova to learn Russian, but not only Russian, to learn about Moldovan culture and Moldovan people, to better understand the world. Now, I was kind of apprehensive about going to Moldova because I knew no Russian. I was kind of worried that maybe I wouldn't be accepted or they wouldn't think of me too fondly. But instantly, my host dad, in the first week, took me to his church where he was baptized, and he performed a ritual where he wrote down on a piece of paper the members of his family, and I noticed on that list he had included my name. And then he lit a candle under the Virgin Mary to bring health and success to his family, and he made it a point to show me that I was a member of his family. So, apart from a drunk man shouting, "Yankees go home!" at me one night, I was very accepted into the Moldovan community. I met many kids my age, and even though I was American and they were Moldovan, I spoke English, they spoke Russian, we were good friends. We would go to coffee together, have kebab, just do things that young kids do. It was a lot of fun to make new friends and to experience life from their point of view. It also made me sad to become friends with them because I knew that I would have to leave them and that our friendship was only temporary, that it would not always be how it was, and they all wanted to leave their country. They have no way of making money in their country, there's no jobs for graduates, education is not very good, so they all wanted to leave. And I think that's a function of the wealth inequality in their country. Many people are very poor, can't afford food or electricity, but there are sports cars driving down the street. It's a very interesting situation. But also, I think I'm part of the problem too, because I live here in the United States and we're a very wealthy country, wealthier than most nations in the world, and even we have issues with wealth inequality. When one family has more wealth than half of the country, I don't know if that's right. The reading today really reminded me of something that one of my friends told me. He was an English teacher, he was Moldovan, went to Purdue University, lived in America for 10 years, and then decided he wanted to go back to Moldova and try and make a difference. He was a Soviet guy, and he still said that he clings to his Soviet values. He told me that Jesus was the first Marxist. It was quite a shocking phrase to hear. I'd never thought about something like that before. But what I think that means, what he meant by that, is that if you look at the teachings of Jesus, he called for us to give what we have and to live together as a community, to share what we can, share our talents and gifts. That's really what he thought the Soviet Union was, everybody working together for the greater good to build the perfect society. So he joined his Soviet ideology and his religion together in a way that made sense to him. And I think that we can all join our ideology together with our religion to make the world a better place. I think that everyone's religion is to leave the world a better place than they found it, regardless of creed. I went to Moldova because I'm interested in history, primarily, and it's really interesting to learn how history is different based on the language you speak. The language in the Russian language, history is taught differently than it's taught in the US. I learned about a different World War II than we learned about. I learned about the World War II from the Soviet perspective, which many Americans don't know much about. We celebrated Soviet holidays and Moldovan culture. A big part of Moldovan culture is the Orthodox religion. Orthodoxy is celebrated a lot differently than, for instance, Lutheranism. People don't go to church on Sundays generally. They just go whenever they feel like it, whenever they want to do a ritual. They go to an icon, maybe light a candle or say a prayer. Many people sign the cross in front of an icon of the Virgin Mary and say a prayer for health. Churches are very ornately decorated, and there's a section in the back where only the priest can go. And the section in the back, I believe, that symbolizes heaven. And they stand back there and sing during the services. Very few people go to church. Maybe that's a relic from the Soviet days when religion was suppressed. Maybe they just prefer to practice their religion at home. I'm not sure, but it is still a very religious country, though it is not practiced openly. And in conclusion, I will say a poem in Russian. На холодной земле стоит город большой. Там горят фонари, из машины гудят. И над городом ночь, и над ночью луна, и сегодня луна капли крови красна.